Testing. Hi. Oh, thank you. You too.
Hello, hello. All right, I think we're just about to get started. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I'm Grant. This is my brother Doug, and we're the co-owners here at Wax Space. For those of you that haven't been here before, this is the work club for Oak Cliff. So if you're looking for a place to work and meet neighbors, this is a good place to do it. We're really honored to be a part of this tonight, and looking forward to a good forum.
And like Grant said, this is our first time to host this forum, and we're just really thankful that the candidates took the time to take these questions tonight. And we will be filming this and releasing it through The Advocate later. Oh, let's kill the music. So it will be recorded for people to share afterwards. So like Grant said, Wax Space is, we call it the Oak Cliff Work Club, so check us out. It's $80 membership once a month for access to work here, and yeah. So with further ado, we want to hand this over to Emma, who is going to be asking the questions tonight and leading us through this. She's going to go over some rules real quick. So.
Okay, hi. My name's Emma Ruby. I'm the editor over at the Oak Cliff Advocate, so all those magazines that you get delivered monthly, that's me. So just to go over how the forum is going to work, we polled all of our neighbors asking for questions. So all of our questions have been gathered from the audience and community members prior to this event. We did screen and vet questions just to ensure relevance, appropriateness, and non-duplication. So if there were, several questions that had kind of the same idea to them, we may have worked them together so they were a little bit more all-encompassing. Every candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. We will have a timer going that they can see and a timer on the screen as well so that the audience is able to see that we are sticking to that 2-minute time limit, and that's just to make sure, we're working through questions in a timely manner. We are also going to ask candidates to respond in a rotating order just to make sure things are fair. So Albert may answer first on the first question, Mariano answers first on the second question, and so on and so forth. The goal for the forum tonight is just to provide an opportunity for all the candidates to express their views, to encourage transparency and accountability, and to help all the voters make informed decisions in the upcoming city council election. The candidates will also begin the night with a 2-minute opening statement, and we'll have the opportunity to end the night with a 2-minute concluding statement. And like Doug said, we are recording the debate. It'll be posted on Facebook, but we also will put it up on the Oak Cliff Advocate website. So if you have any friends who weren't able to make it out tonight but want to see all the information that is gone over tonight, that'll be the way to do it. So without further ado, we're going to begin. Okay, so starting with opening statements, we'll start with Albert. And Albert, you are going to have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. So my name is Albert Mata. I grew up here in Oak Cliff. Every school I went to had been in Oak Cliff. I went to too many elementary schools to remember. I went to a middle school called Harry Stone in South Oak Cliff, and I graduated high school from Molina. I did well enough to get a full-ride scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin, where I studied finance, and came back and started a career here in consulting. But that's just a little bit about me. Now let me tell you why I'm running. So I am running to make sure that we have representation for all of Oak Cliff, regardless of whether you live on Colorado or whether you live on Clarendon. I'm running to make sure that we have community-driven development, because for a really long time, we've had changes happening in our community that have been done without our input and without our consent, and it's time to change that. And finally, I'm running to help build stronger neighborhoods. And what I mean by that is we need to make sure that our communities have the baseline city services that they're paying for, that we overinvest in underinvested communities, and we have a lot of them in Oak Cliff and the southern sector in general. Me llamo Alberto Mata y me estoy postulando para el Consejo Municipal. Yo soy de aquí de Oak Cliff, me gradué de la Molina High School y seguí estudiando en la Universidad de Texas en Austin, donde estudié finanzas. Me estoy postulando por 3 razones. Primeramente, me estoy postulando para asegurar que tengamos representación sincera para todo Oak Cliff, sin importar si vives por Colorado o por el calle Clarendon. También me estoy postulando para asegurar que tenemos desarrollo dirigido por la comunidad y también para asegurar que tenemos barrios fortalecidos. Gracias por estar aquí y ojalá que disfruten la noche.
And I will be honest, if it's okay, if it records, all right? This is good, great acoustics. Thank you for being here tonight. This is a very lovely space. These gentlemen have been here for quite a while. I saw this place when this was very beginning, and I'm excited at the growth that has happened. That's the reason why I'm running for city council. I see a lot of my neighbors, people I've known for many, many years, people I haven't seen for some years, people who are new to the scene that I'm excited to work with, and then neighbors that now literally are my neighbors within walking distance. I walk down here. I actually want to throw little rocks at the windows for these two guys almost daily, and I see lots of my new neighbors. I've lived north of Colorado. I've also lived on Jefferson, north of Jefferson, and now I live south of Clarendon. It is true that District 1 is a little bit of two worlds, and it is a big deal to me. And now I've gotten to see all three. My neighbors north of Colorado know how to get a lot of things done. They know City Hall in and out. They get called back all the time. They're on all the boards. I see them now everywhere because I'm running for city council. So that's great. It's nice to see them again as well. And now I see new neighbors. My neighbors across the street from me, the ones whose houses I walk by, the broken sidewalks that Albert was alluding to, and some of the different services that are not exactly the same. So I'm running to speak to my neighbors in Spanish because I'm doing that all the time now, and it's great, and my kids are doing more of it as well. I'm also running so that, yes, south of Clarendon and south of Jefferson gets more of a voice because they have just as much talent and just as many needs. They just haven't been in the game for that long. So it's time to bring them in. Thank you.
All right, and Chad, your opening statement.
Thank you. My name's Chad West. I'm the current council member for District 1. A little bit of background about me for anyone who hasn't met me before. The Army put me through college, brought me to Texas over 20 years ago. I served in San Antonio, overseas for a little bit, and then got to Oak Cliff as fast as I could. I'm a combat veteran, and since I moved to North Oak Cliff, I am now raising my family here. I have gone through 3 house renovations. I swear this one's my last one. But I moved here because I love the architecture, the people, the neighborhoods, and we have to preserve what we have. I'm also a self-made small business owner, multiple small businesses that I've started over time. And I love it that we have so many entrepreneurs here in Oak Cliff and in this room tonight. I'm very proud of my record for the last 4 years. I've been a staunch supporter of the police chief and his efforts to reduce violent crime across the city, and it's finally starting to work. And I look forward to seeing those efforts translate to other types of crimes. I have been a big supporter and actually a champion on city council for preserving affordability, for helping people stay in their homes by voting every time for reducing the city's tax rate, and for programs such as the Home Improvement Preservation Program, which is something that I've championed over the past. Planning the West Oak Cliff area plan that will take Elmwood and everything south of Clarendon and west of Clarendon, and even south of Jefferson, into the future for the next 20 to 50 years, both in preservation, in parks, and in planning. And I'm looking forward to talking with you guys more tonight about the plans for the future. We have a bond coming up, the 2024 bond, and it's very important that we get it right. We get sidewalks, roads, parks in there for Oak Cliff for every corner of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
So our first topic that we're going to go over tonight is WOCAP. Candidates, what do you feel were the successes and failures of WOCAP, and what role do you feel a city council person plays in the next steps of neighborhood determination now that it has passed? And Mariana, as soon as we get this microphone fixed, we'll start with you.
Interesting. Okay. So when I first heard about WOCAP, it was a couple years ago. I didn't have to catch up necessarily when I moved to this neighborhood, but I definitely got much more of an earful. We were getting close to the end. I moved in, I live on Boyd Street. I live about half a mile south of here. I walk to Tyler Station, as I've already said, pretty much almost every day. And so when I moved into my new home, it's a little 1950s home that needed a lot of repairs. And as I got to know the neighborhood, my neighbors, my neighborhood association invited me over, and I learned that WOCAP was in its final stages and that they were very, very interested in the outcome. They were very interested in preserving the single-family residences. They didn't really want to have people coming in or large development coming in and taking over lots and houses that are crumbling. We still have a few of them. I've got 2 vacant houses right next door to me. Probably over time, if someone doesn't move in soon, they could probably go at not a discount, obviously, because the market is not that, but at a discounted rate based on the fact that they've been vacant for so long. So we've got all these different things happening, and then we've got a neighborhood like Elmwood who also wants development. They need to have their businesses open. They're local people who have invested, again, in their own neighborhood, and they are looking to have their businesses open, but WOCAP needed to pass because their zoning cases were in a queue that required that plan to pass first before their cases could come up. So I brokered a little bit of a deal. I got involved. I started asking questions. I called people I knew. I asked more questions. I talked to the neighbors and said, hey, maybe you want to ask for this, ask for this. And slowly over time, the great things that came out of it for me is that my neighbors now know how to go to City Hall, and they know that city staff works for them, that they don't have to just take whatever it is that they're given, but they can continue to ask for more. And so I think that WOCAP is a good stepping stone, and there's a lot more to come. Thank you.
All right, Chad, your 2 minutes starts.
All right, so I started WOCAP. WOCAP was started after a series of events. The first one being when the beloved building that El Corazon was in on Zhang and Davis was torn down and a CVS place. I made a vow at that point to former council member Scott Griggs that I was never going to let something like that happen again under my tenure. Thank you. It was identified that there were a lot of places at risk for that kind of consolidation of lots and overdevelopment, and most of them were in the southern and western parts of our district, the WOCAP area, which impacted 44,000 homes. I started zoning authorized hearings in areas which are very controversial and easier to not do and be quiet and keep your head down, as all of my predecessors in the past had done. But I took that step that I knew was going to be controversial and shake up a hornet's nest to say, let's talk about the zoning. Let's do something a little bit scary because we've got to preserve these neighborhoods for the future. So we started WOCAP to let us move forward with protections for the neighborhoods. Engagement by the city, especially with our Hispanic community, was not great at first, but we learned, thanks to advocates like Albert Mata and a lot of other people in this room, and city staff pivoted, and they got much better over time. They started doing things in Spanish, more pop-ups, and we had more engagement in the West Oak Cliff area plan than we had in the entire city's racial equity plan. We had that much engagement. And we were praised for the engagement in Sprouts for our English and Spanish outreach, the Sprouts development, because we learned from WOCAP and we took that and used it. WOCAP is the key to protection, development, parks, trails for the next 20 to 50 years for this neighborhood, for every neighborhood west. It's going to impact 44,000 residents, and I'm very proud of it. Thank you.
All right, I'll start with the good things. I think in WOCAP, they identified several neighborhoods that were in need of streets and sidewalks that hadn't been identified or were on the needs inventory list before. I like some of the recommendations for green spaces and pocket parks and trees and medians and things like that. But I think a lot of people will share the same experience. There was a lot of bad still, and that bad primarily was in the process. The process for WOCAP's engagement was poor. There was a severe lack of representation. Unfortunately, I felt that the task force that was put together was not reflective of the community itself. The community itself was about 85% Latinx, Hispanic. And there were more developers to start this the task force than there were Latinx people on this task force, right? But I want to address one comment that was made probably earlier this week, that although this plan wasn't perfect, that it did exactly what it was supposed to do to get people engaged. Even though it was stated those people came kicking and screaming, and it's controversial, I want to make it clear those people came kicking and screaming because they weren't invited to the party. And when they found out about it, they found out about it once it had been drafted already. And the lack of representation showed in some of the recommendations. There were recommendations that would have hurt some of the small businesses, some of the minority and immigrant-owned small businesses in the West Oak Cliff area, right? So in terms of what the role is of a city council member, in any of these processes, I think a city council member needs to be the chief engagement officer of the district, right? And I make a commitment that when I'm asking for your vote, it's not the only time you're gonna see me in your neighborhood or your community or at your doorstep.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to our next topic, we're going to cover a couple questions relating to housing and development in Oak Cliff. Our first question is that the Quality of Life Committee is going to pick up the short-term rental issue in the next coming months. The City Council will likely consider this item by summer 2023. What role should short-term rentals play in District 1? And as a City Council member, how would you approach this citywide issue for our district? Chad, you will begin.
Testing. All right. First of all, status quo is not working. We all know that. There's too many problems in single-family neighborhoods because they are not currently being regulated. They're not being taxed. A lot of them aren't. It's a huge problem in the city. I sat on the last task force. I voted against sending it back to the Plan Commission because I wanted to solve this last year. It is still continuing to drag on because it's political. I believe my position on this is that short-term rentals do play a role in the city. A lot of people use them for a second income to stay in their homes. I believe they should be allowed by right outside of single-family neighborhoods. When you get into single-family neighborhoods, it gets complicated because you might have an absentee owner who is not playing as a good neighbor. You get enough of them in a neighborhood, it tears apart fabric and the engagement of the neighborhood, and you lose that neighborhood feel because these are transient folks who are coming in and out. So for me, it's going to be very hard for me to support short-term rentals to replace single-family homes in single-family areas. However, I support them in back houses, granny flats, ADUs, as long as the homeowner is on site. They're maintaining what's in there. It gets complicated legally with the Fifth Circuit when you kind of try to exclude corporate owners from doing that. So I'm not going to get wonky on that, but I'm going to tell you the next few months we are going to make this decision, and it's I definitely want feedback. I put a survey out for this as well because I haven't heard much from our community on this. It's really the folks in District 14, East Dallas, that have been driving this discussion for the entire city, and I'm wanting to find out how many people in Oak Cliff are short-term rental owners, how many on that income, because it's not a decision we should be making in a vacuum. So if you have not taken my survey, whether you own an STR or not, please do so. Go to the District 1 Facebook page. It's on there, and I definitely value your feedback. Thank you.
Generally, as a person, as a candidate and a city councilman, I believe in compromise and I believe in balance, right? And I take this approach and this philosophy towards a solution. Some of the things that I think might be appropriate, right, are not outright banning short-term rentals across the city. So in places like single-family residential areas, we should allow short-term rentals, but we want to put in some control, right? We want some of the balance that we're talking about. So in terms of allowing short-term rentals in owner-occupied properties in single-family residential neighborhoods, I'd be in favor of that, right? And that does a couple things. Having an owner-occupied short-term rental, you have someone on site immediately to deal with any issues. Sometimes that means the people who are renting that place are less likely to cause any kind of disturbance and nuisance to the neighborhood. But also we allow and people to make money or have extra source of income from their home. And we know that's very important right now in Oak Cliff. That's a tool that we can use, or a lot of people are using to help prevent the pressures of displacement, right? But also, we should be allowing in other areas like certain entertainment districts or multifamily zone areas to have short-term rentals with slightly less restrictions, right? Yo creo, como candidato, como persona y como concejal, voy a tomar una dirección de balance en todas las soluciones que aprovecho, ¿verdad? Todas las soluciones que creamos. Mi balance es tener short-term rentals, rentales de tiempo corto, en vecindarios residenciales, pero tener la restricción que debemos que tener el dueño, también la propiedad. Hay que encontrar un balance en todo lo que hacemos. Thank you.
Ah, there we go. Okay. All right, so I got some notes. I had a really great conversation with one of, for me, she's one of the leading ladies at this point because that's who I talk to. So her name is Laura, I'll just say that much. And she's with a group who has an incredible amount of information. And her viewpoint from the get-go was, it's a no-go across the board. So that's where their stance is. And I think that Councilman West was talking about D14 and a lot of the very outspoken voices, and she's definitely one of them. So we had a long conversation, and within our notes, we talked about how, in my opinion, and I'm guessing you'd think so too, an absent landlord rarely makes a good neighbor. I mean, that's just in general, right? Okay. That's short term, long term, 30 seconds, 50 seconds, an absent landlord generally does not make a good neighbor. You're talking about forcing someone to be a good neighbor. We also have, yes, it is a tool. Short-term, long-term, mid-term, all kinds of rentals are tools in order to grow our income, our generational wealth, our financial equity, all of the different buzzwords that we've been hearing that are true and that we need to have. So that is true. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals did rule against the New Orleans STR ordinance, and that's because it seems to me they based it almost 100% on a homestead exemption, and so the Fifth Circuit ruled that interstate commerce is it's going to be violated by that because you can't allow a neighbor to do business and then not a corporation to do business next door, and you can't make that designation by saying the homestead exemption is what makes that owner, right? But there are a couple of floating ideas. I'm really thrilled not only to be studying the idea. I've been an STR person. I've had an STR, and I've also stayed, and I don't think I'm a transient in that neighborhood where I stayed. I was a part of it. So you see I'm studying it. Let's put it that way.
There is a rising interest in conservation districts across Oak Cliff, and there's a worry about overdevelopment, like in Bishop Arts, in neighborhoods in Oak Cliff. How would you balance neighbors' desire for preservation while also ensuring that District 1 continues to grow and there's room for economic development in Oak Cliff? Albert, you'll begin.
So I like the way you use the term balance, because I will talk about this again, right? It's just a general thing that I think I believe in and that I will push forward as a city councilman. So we know that South Winnetka Heights is currently in the process of setting up their conservation district. And I talked to some neighbors that were involved in that process. And there were some things that I heard that I really liked and some things that I wish would be slightly different, right? I am fully supportive of neighborhoods working together and organizing to make sure that they protect the character of their neighborhoods, right? We need that in Oak Cliff, but at the same time, I also will have to advocate for renters and people who want to live in this community or people who grew up in this community and want to continue to stay there. One thing that I say is we cannot stay the same. That doesn't mean we have to have drastic change, but when we are reviewing the vision of our neighborhoods, I want to make sure that we have voices in the room, and I will be one of them, that advocates for including zoning for duplexes or triplexes, or where appropriate based on lot size or maybe location on specific corners, things like quadplexes, right? Because those are things that add more units, that help ease the demand that we have that's driving up prices for rents, right? And those are things that we're also used to in this community. If you go almost in any neighborhood in Oak Cliff, you'll see a duplex. In some neighborhoods, you'll see quadplexes, right? Those things are gentle for us to kind of accept because we've seen them and they exist already. I would love to be able to continue to encourage that going forward so we can have more units, but at the same time protecting the character of our neighborhoods. And I'm sorry I didn't have time to translate that.
Mariana's next.
Conservation districts? Conservation district, go. Okay, I get it. So, conservation districts are wonderful. When we moved into our neighborhood, it was changing a little, and our neighbors wanted to start that process. I remember walking down the sidewalk and looking at all the different homes and picking out details that were similar. And then we were able to make decisions about what we wanted to come to our neighborhood. And that was the most important part, was to work together with your neighbors to say, hey, Joe and Sally and Fred's house all look very similar, and somebody wants to come and build something that looks totally different. Well, that's what you don't want, right? And I think that we can do that a little bit without a formal conservation district. I think that there are many tools to get that started. It's unfortunate that to get a conservation district, you have to shell out money as a neighborhood. It's really hard to raise money. In my neighborhood, we don't have T-shirts yet, so I've been wearing the Elmwood shirt because, it's close enough. But it's just hard. It's hard to get people organized, to get the time to come together, and then on top of that, to have an overlay and to find out that you have to pay money for it. So I'd like to see that, reduce that fee, and then also just make it a little bit easier to get together. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's two different topics we're talking about here. There's preservation for home ownership. There's also welcoming in renters. So it's two different tools to deal with protecting neighborhoods and then also welcoming in the density that's coming to this city, whether we want it or not. So I'll talk about ownership first. I fully support conservation districts. As a council member, I love them because they police themselves. I don't get as many calls from conservation districts because they're handling it with all their issues within the district. Happy to get the calls, but they police themselves pretty well. In fact, when we learned during the West Oak Cliff Area Plan, a lot of neighborhoods are interested in doing neighborhood protections like that down here in this area. And we're hosting a workshop along with a couple organizations to teach people how to do that through the city here in, I believe it's next month. The West Oak Cliff Area Plan also opened the door to downzone one area, which the little area of Jimtown, just kind of south of Clarendon, west of Hampton. Mary Lou Paris is the president over there, and that area is actually zoned for apartments, but it's still a bunch of single-family homes. They wanted to protect their neighborhood. The West Oak Cliff Area Plan has opened up the opportunity to do that, and I support that. And on the renter side, last year in the city of Dallas, we had the population the size of the city of Berkeley dropped on us. That's the city, that's not the region. Those folks are coming here, pushing up prices for apartments, pushing up prices for homes, and pushing people out of the city, displacing folks. all over the place. We've got to accept density in the city. We've got to accept accessory dwelling units throughout the city. And where we can put apartments, where we can put fourplexes and sixplexes that's not going to displace people, we've got to do that. I believe our answer to that is along the east side of 35. It's already zoned for that over by Jefferson. There's a lot of vacant lots over there. We have a woman-owned development coming by Mintwood that's using the PFC, Public Facilities Corporation tool, to do just that. And we're about to see 100 new affordable units through that, and I want to see more of those. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to a question about transportation. Cycling infrastructure is an important part of a city's transportation plan, providing quick, affordable, and healthy transportation to an area's residents. There is overwhelming support for cycling as an alternative form of transit, according to Dallas's strategic mobility plan, but there's little bike infrastructure in Oak Cliff. Bikes are forced into the roads, and as with most of Dallas's roads, cycling in Oak Cliff is stressful and often dangerous, as we all know how great Dallas drivers are. Do you believe that the cycling infrastructure in Oak Cliff meets the needs of its residents? Why do you believe that? And if not, how do you plan to increase and promote biking as transportation in this district? And Mariana, I believe you'll be starting this one.
Okay. You may know me from such clubs as Bike Friendly Oak Cliff, or such renegade bike lanes as I did not paint. People say that I did. I did not do that. But I did learn a lot of things when I decided to start biking around Dallas. So for one whole summer, I decided to spend my time on DART. That wherever I needed to go, I would take DART. I would take the bus, the number 12 specifically, downtown, and then hook onto another line if I could. And it was a bust, of course. You know, it took me an hour to get anywhere, 2 blocks, and it took a while. Then after that, I decided to take another summer where I would bike. So I biked to work from Stevens Park Estates up on Marydale and 30, just Plymouth and 30, all the way down here to Rugged, down at Bishop Dunn. So I would ride all of that. I saw the trail go in on Rugged. I watched some of the sidewalks. I've seen the bike infrastructure coming to different places. People are still biking on the sidewalk because they don't feel safe on the street. One of the things that makes you feel a little bit safer is when cars will slow down. They will slow down if you're wearing a dress. They'll slow down if you're wearing green pants, if you're wearing a green helmet. If you're wearing a helmet, that for me is the biggest part of all of this. And so I would like to have a citywide helmet giveaway because if you're riding your bike, you can slow down the traffic if you get enough attention on yourself. If you're going to a business meeting, you want to look nice, you ride your bike in your heels, and I guarantee you they will slow down for you. It happens. And that's not going to require a bike lane. That's culture, and that is us coming together and showing other people by example. And that's what I like about that. Thank you.
So I've always been a runner, never really a cyclist. I hadn't had a bike in, oh gosh, it was probably like 10 years. But my kids are starting to learn how to ride, and they do know how to ride actually, 7 and 5. And we've been trying to go out. We went on the trail. We went on Coombs Creek Trail. We've been on the Elmwood Trail, and we always pack up our bikes and drive to it, right? Because we don't feel really safe getting there on the road, especially not with them. And one day my daughter asked me, why don't we just ride in that lane right there that has a bike on it to the trail? and I told her it's not safe. And so that was I already had the wake up call, but that was a reminder that we've got to do better in the city. The city passed a bike plan in 2011, and it has been underfunded by usually $1 million a year up until recently. We had the benefit of having COVID money come in from Washington that gave us a little extra money. And then Jaime Resendez, Jesse Moreno, and myself, who all ride bikes, pushed the city manager to put some of that money towards the infrastructure. So for the first time ever, we funded bike lanes, the bike plan, in the amount of $2 million, which is the first time it was ever overfunded in a year. And we hope to see more of that. Since the last couple of years, we got protected bike lanes on Vernon. It was actually started as a traffic calming issue because people kept running into the back of homes from Wynwood North, and the bike lanes have helped slow that down. We are looking at doing the same thing. I initiated the Jefferson Boulevard lane reduction from 6 to 4 lanes at the request of several neighborhoods. We're looking at doing protected bike lanes there as well. The task force is going to figure out what they want, but that is definitely going. You're starting to see them along Fort Worth Avenue to connect the bike lanes there as well. And we're going to keep doing that through the city. Thank you.
Bike lanes are interesting. And I think this is one of the topics that we see a divide in our community about. Right? There are some people who live in Oak Cliff that wish that Oak Cliff was more bikeable. I think that's a great aspiration, and I think it will do wonders for the community in terms of increasing mobility, adding transportation options. But I do want to be clear, and I do understand, and I know that there are parts of our community as well that feel like bike lanes aren't needed, right? A big part of this community is, whether you like it or not, I'm just speaking facts, are completely dependent on the automobile, right? And that's for many reasons. I myself do think we need more bike infrastructure. I think we probably need to be selective about that bike infrastructure and where it's placed. There's parts of our district that are more urban. It would be maybe the urban core of D1. We should have significant bike infrastructure so people can commute and move around. But there's other places that see bike lanes come up and they feel like their other needs are being overlooked. So I wouldn't, in some neighborhoods, say, hey, we need bike lanes before we make sure the sidewalks are in decent shape, right? So once again, philosophy on balance. Do we need bike lanes? Yes. Do we need bike lanes in some places that have sidewalks in disrepair or are dangerous for our kids to cross the street, right? So that's the approach that I take. In terms of where some of that money comes from, we have money coming in, hopefully, from DART to help increase transportation options, to help put bike lanes and things like that around train stations and bus hubs. So thanks.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Our next topic is going to address homelessness. Homelessness is only becoming a more and more relevant issue. There are encampments at 30 and Sylvan, as well as I-35 and 10th Street. The city has formed a new commission to handle the problem of homelessness. We obviously have the Miramar Hotel up on Fort Worth. How do you plan to work with the new city committee to make sure that they give adequate resources to Oak Cliff and make sure that its needs are heard?
Thank you for that question. Homelessness is a tough problem. When the mayor appointed me to chair Housing and Homelessness Solutions my first term, I knew nothing about it. I assumed every panhandler was homeless, and most homeless people didn't really want to get help. I learned during the inclement weather that we had, in I guess it was early 2020, when I went down to the shelter and I spoke with folks. The vast majority of homeless people actually want help. They want to get resources and help. But the answer is not just putting them in a house without resources. You've got to actually have people there to provide services. You got to have job placement, because otherwise they're going to get right back out on the street. The city has encampment resolution teams which go out all the time to get homeless people, move them out of there and try to get them into homes. They end up back out there because we don't yet have all the services we need in the city, but we are getting better. There's 2 ways we've done this so far and how we're going to continue to get better. Before 2020, the city would send 7 police officers, including a chief, out to any call involving a homeless person that was violent. 9 times out of 10, they ended up in jail, which this just perpetuated the problem. The city now has Right Care, which actually sends a person who is a counselor out there who's going to try to divert them into a different facility that's going to help on their mental health. That is working. It's taking the strain off our police force, and it's actually helping homeless people get to where they need to be. For the remaining folks that are still out there on the street, we've got to continue doing the outreach that we're doing. The Sylvan 30 and the other underpass, we've continued to reach out to those folks and get them into housing. And then we've got to make that where it's just not a place they want to be. They'd rather be in a hotel, or they'd rather try to find housing and compassionate care with services to get back on their feet. And we'll continue doing that. Thank you.
So, I want to talk about homelessness a bit. And I think many of us, most people, often feel like we don't want to see homelessness in our city. We don't want to see it in our neighborhoods. And I think that's natural. But one thing that we can't do is just wish it away or take homeless people and put them in a box and think that they'll be out of sight, out of mind. Right? We have to put our money where our mouth is as a city. What this means is we have to continue to invest in housing, generally, just more units, invest in affordable housing as well, and invest in housing options for our unhoused neighbors, to give them the opportunity to have a place, have access to services that can help them change course or find better options or get the help that they need, right? So generally, that is an approach that I think that we need to continue to take. I think some of the city's programs, the real-time housing program has been effective, and they're reaching some of their goals. We need to continue to invest in programs like that. Yo creo que como ciudad, como ciudadanos, no queremos ver gente sin viviendas en las calles o en nuestra ciudad, en nuestros vecindarios, pero tenemos que poner nuestro dinero a trabajar, ¿verdad? No nada más podemos a decir no los quiero ver y ponerlos en un lugar donde ya no se ven en las calles, ¿verdad? Tenemos que poner el intento a mejorar opciones para viviendas para estas personas, donde puedan recibir servicios, donde puedan tener la opción y la habilidad de pues sobresalir y cambiar su vida.
By the time I get the hang of it, it'll be time to go home. All right. Not contrived. One of my notebooks is my bridge notebook. So 20 years ago, when I came to Dallas, when my former husband, Scott Griggs, helped me find a job with the Dallas County Medical Examiner, I investigated the death of a homeless person and all that was left with their bones. So we pick them up, we bring them back, we try to identify them and try to find their family. At that point, because I'm running low on time, I won't tell you the whole story of that guy or anybody else. But the idea is that I wanted to begin to understand their life before I had to find their family to tell them that they were not around anymore. So I started volunteering at the Bridge, the homeless shelter downtown, when they opened. 20 years later, my neighbor down the street is about to be homeless, and I end up taking him. I had lots of conversations with Councilman West and City Homeless Services and all different people to get him there, and the same story that Mr. West is telling is true. He didn't want to stay because he was not ready to stay. And it's always the same stories over and over and over again because, as my daughter says it, I'm low on time. I asked her, and I took her with me to a meeting at the Bridge, and she wanted to have the tour, and she's very interested in this subject. And I asked her, what do you think that homeless people need the most? She said, a loving home. Not a home where you just have a place to sleep, but a home where you have direction, with a caregiver who sets up your appointments and who makes your soup for you and who takes care of you, because that's going to keep you in there and that's going to make you feel better. And so I have that in mind. I've got a meeting with Dr. Woody down at the Bridge on a really great project I want to share with you another time. So after spring break, I'll have another exciting thing to talk about. Thanks.
on the topic of safety. Many of our community members have experienced hearing random gunfire throughout our district. At multiple times throughout the last year, gunfire near playgrounds has been recorded during the day when children are at the playgrounds playing. What can be done to address gunfire in our district and to better promote safety in all of our public spaces? And Albert, this one will go to you first.
So let me be clear. This is not something that government alone can stop, right? This is an issue that, unfortunately, has some societal resolutions. It's a problem partly with culture and society, but as a city, we need to make sure that whenever there are holidays and times where we see some of this activity be the most active, that we put as many resources as possible to respond to those situations. That way that we can find and prosecute the people that are breaking the law. That only has a certain limit, right? We only have a certain amount of resources, but to continue to do our best to make sure that we are tackling the issue, finding the perpetrators. But at the same time, we need to continue to invest in our community so that people have better options and better things to do with their time than shooting guns in the air. And most of it is shooting guns in the air. Some of it might be shooting at people, right? But it still is scary. It still is not something we want in our communities, right? So I think the city needs to continue to work and invest into our youth in programs that give them options and education to maybe learn how to start businesses or how to form entities or how to do different things that will give them opportunities that would make them, hopefully, have better options or different things to be doing and be more responsible members of our community, right? Esto no es un problema que se puede resolver nada más con la ciudad. Debemos que asegurar que tenemos policía ahí para pues responder a estas situaciones cuando se pueda, pero también necesitamos invertir en sistemas, en programas sociales para ayudar a los jóvenes de esta ciudad.
I'm really thankful for this question because it's one that does stump me. And I can't tell you how in the world we can stop this with one approach. It is. I'm not going to say. I don't want to use the word cultural because I'm not talking about my culture shooting guns because I'm Hispanic too. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the culture of all of the group of people who shoot guns. That's its own culture, is what I'm saying. And so I'm not sure how to reach them, but I would like to work on that. I agree we need to have always enough public safety, which is at the top of my list. We always need to have people around to respond in case there's a dangerous situation. But I hear it too, and we know when it happens. It's New Year's, and it's Christmas, and it's when we have parties, right? When we get together. I'll leave you with a very short story about the medical examiner because, some of these things end up in that situation as well, right? You hear about the full moon, how people get crazy on the full moon. People get crazy in this county and just in general when they have 3 or 4 days together, okay? So when you start to get 3 or 4 days together, sometimes you shoot your gun in the air and sometimes you might stab your brother-in-law. It happens because you've been drinking a lot, you've been spending a lot of time together, and you've had a lot of time off. And so maybe these are some of the things we need to start thinking about our neighbors and our friends, and use the other tools as well. Thank you.
So when I was in the military, I, of course, shot guns, and I'm a concealed handgun license holder. I have a couple of guns I keep in a safe, and y'all, that ammunition is expensive. Like, I deterred to go to the range because I don't want to pay, $15 for a little box of ammunition. So it blows my mind that people are out there just wasting ammunition, shooting it in the air. It's a very tough problem, or they would have solved it somewhere in Dallas. And it's not just an Oak Cliff problem; it is a problem citywide. I mean, you hear Kara Mendelson in far north Dallas complaining about it too, and so it's an issue all over the city. The problem is by the time the call comes in, the police can arrive. The guys are gone, right? The shooters are gone. So there's no way to like catch them in the act to do it. I think and this is a little side note. Before I came in office, they tried a flyer to DISD little kids to encourage the little kids to tell the teenagers, don't shoot your guns, using an example of a child who a bullet had come down and maimed her for life. And so I don't know if there was evidence of that working or not, but they're as bad as ever now. I think in this specific question, we're talking about parks, and one way to deter it at parks is getting more eyes on the park. You have one or two people there. The guys shooting the guns don't really care. They're not going to be spotted most likely. You make the park welcoming, a place tons and tons of people want to go. They're going to be less likely to hang out there and do shenanigans, especially the teenage kids. So I think we've got to invest more money in our parks. We've got a bond election coming up in 2024, and we're going to do that in Oak Cliff. Better lighting, better amenities, better equipment, better sidewalks, and I think that will bring more people to more of our parks. And we're going to bring the next thing is going to be a skate park at Westmoreland Park. I can't wait for that. So thank you.
So we have a new bond election coming up in 2024. With the new bond cycle approaching, appointments for the task force are going to take place in the next few weeks. If you were the city council member when appointments for the task force were taking place, what would you look for when appointing somebody to that task force? And what types of things would you like to see included in the next bond for our district? And Mariana, we'll start with you on this one.
This bond coming up will be the fourth one in 10 years. And each one has obviously had its own particular focus. In this case, we're going to talk about infrastructure. And so, yeah, it's going to be about roads. On Saturday, we had the same question, a very similar question. And I brought up that we haven't built a road that hasn't filled up. And we've never built a road that doesn't need to be fixed and patched. And I do see construction all the time. We also have bonds from past times. Like I mentioned, this will be the fourth one in 10 years. So we have some money, maybe, in some places. I would like to inventory. I told you that I'm a forensic investigator, and so I appreciate the good hunt for any spare change that might be in anybody's couch that we can use for anything. I also recognize that larger projects take larger amounts of funds. I'm not averse to borrowing more money, but I do always like to take inventory in my own budget, in my home, in my community, and as well as a city council person to find out what we have first, what we can reapply, what we can do quickly, what we can get moving now, and stop the holdups. And I don't want to come to you every time and say, I can't give you what you need because you have to wait until the next bond for it to come up. And then you have to wait for it to be allocated. And I have to go and fight with other people about it because I don't want to fight with anyone. I want our needs to reflect the needs of the city, for the needs of the city to reflect ours, and for us to get what we need, and for everybody else to get what they need too, without always borrowing. That's my case. Thank you.
So the needs inventory collection for the next bond is happening now. I just received the needs inventory from El Tivoli neighborhood recently, just to make sure all their roads and sidewalks are on there. West Oak Cliff area plan identified dozens of roads, sidewalks that need to be repaired. We got all of those in the needs inventory. I have done a shout out to the neighborhood multiple times and asked for everything that you think is a road that needs to be repaired, a sidewalk. Email us, let us know, put in the service request. That's all you got to do through 311. It will make it in the needs inventory. That's how you get your road, your sidewalk, your alley on the bond. It's happening now. One of the important things to note is the bond. I was Scott Griggs' appointee to the 2017 bond, and so I've been through it firsthand. You don't have the reality for it just to be collaborative. It is a fight. You don't have a choice. You got to work behind the scenes with city staff. I'm already doing that to make sure our projects in District 1 are going to all get in there, and that includes park enhancements that I've been hearing from neighbors for 4 years. That includes sidewalks and roads that are on the needs inventory. The horse trading, the negotiations are already happening with my fellow council members, and it would be disastrous to have to come in right now not knowing how a bond works to try to step into this seat and actually represent the district and fight for what you need and what our district wants, because it's happening in all 14 districts right now already. It's coming up. It's the biggest opportunity for us as a district to get our piece and our share of the $1 billion that's going to be allocated across the city. So that's why, if that's the number one reason why I would, ask for your support and bringing me back, so we can get this done, get what Oak Cliff needs for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Thank you.
In terms of what we will be looking for, what we hope we can see, if I was a city council member, some of the appointments, right? I want to make sure that our task force is reflective of our community, that we just don't have professional developers or people that have all the accolades and experience on their resume, but don't have the experience in the community, that don't know people's lived experience in the real Oak Cliff and all of Oak Cliff, right? So I want to make sure, I would put a priority on having working mothers, on having people that live in apartment complexes that are renters themselves, right? So that they can help make some of the decisions that will help impact them. Some of the things that I would like to see on the bond is money for very specific projects. We have somewhat of a park desert around the Hampton and Clarendon corridor. I would love to have money in that bond to acquire land so that we could put a park there, because our neighbors deserve to have nice things too. And along those lines, we need to make sure that we invest in money on the Chalk Hill Trail, because the western side of this district has been ignored for a really long time, right? And those are one of the things that are gonna make our community healthier, safer, more walkable, right? But it's also looking at things equitably, right? Making sure that we give to those communities and folks in those communities that for so long have been ignored. I wanna continue to see money for our streets, but not just for the streets that we all know, but for the streets that we might not travel to. The streets that for many of us are probably on the western side of the district. I have been walking so much over the last month or so, and I have seen so many sidewalks in disrepair, so many neighborhoods that have never had someone looking out for them, right? And that's what I want to make sure that we have in the bond, someone looking out for those neighborhoods that haven't been speaking up. All right, thank you.
All right, so we have one more question tonight before we do our closing statements. So this question is going to address I'll just read it. What is a vote that you feel the incumbent city councilman has maybe gotten wrong during his 4 years in office, where you would have voted differently, and why would you have voted differently? We will be starting with you, Chad, so if there's anything that you look back on.
Sure. Well, I would like to say we had another forum in Elmwood not too long ago, and I was very happy that my two colleagues up here said that I didn't get any votes wrong. So I'm pretty proud of my record. It was pretty close to that. I'm very proud of my voting record. I think I'm most proud of the fact that City Hall it's a tumultuous place, and our district is one of the most active, engaged, activist districts in the city. Actually, all my colleagues say we're the number one, and I'm proud of that. Yeah, I think it's great because we have so much engagement in Oak Cliff. That's what makes us really special, and how different we are. What is interesting about that, though, is it creates a stormy sea with all the development and the stuff that's happening in Oak Cliff all the time. There's always something coming. We just got a Sprouts. That took 2 years because of all the engagement necessary for the Sprouts development to come here. The West Oak Cliff area plan took 3. And there were many people, including one person on the stage with me, who said I needed to stop WOCAP and start over from scratch because it wasn't working. And if I had done that, we would not even be close to being where we are today, with Elmwood's authorized hearing moving forward, with protections for Jimtown coming. I'm most proud, if anything, not my vote, but it's for being a steady person up there, despite all of the waves that are hitting me from both sides, from all over the district, staying a course, listening to the community, and getting the job done, and moving Oak Cliff along, through the process. So ask for your support to bring me back next time. Thank you.
Test. Okay. So, balance, right? The theme of the night. I talked earlier how we need to put our money where our mouth is, right? And how we need to make sure that we invest in services for our in-house neighbors, right? But there's a way of doing that, right? I think one of the votes that I would have probably voted differently on is the vote in 2022 to acquire the University General Hospital. Although, let's be clear, this is not in the district. It is adjacent to the district, and people of this community, our council member should have been aware that people would care and would have cared and would have had strong feelings about the location of this hospital, right? So I would have not voted to acquire this property without first having some sort of community meeting to get feedback and have a strong process of community engagement to make sure that you all knew what the city's objectives were, that you all knew what we were trying to do, and so that at the same time I could have received feedback from you all. And then I could go to City Hall better informed and better prepared to make a vote that is reflective of the will of the community, right? Lo que yo hubiera hecho diferente, un voto diferente sería el voto de comprar el terreno donde estaba el hospital por el calle Hampton y Perryton. Hay un hospital viejo donde la ciudad la compró para convertirla en un lugar para gente sin viviendas y va a proveer servicios. Yo no hubiera votado sí para comprar esa propiedad sin primero haber hablado con la comunidad, ha recibido las opiniones y el comentario de la comunidad. Entonces yo con esa información podría ir al ayuntamiento a tener una opinión más reflectiva de la comunidad.
I remember this question from the Elmwood Forum, and it was a good question, and I remember answering it in this fashion. I said, whoever asked this question and put it in the box is the person I want to talk to about the vote that they are not in agreement with. That's actually really important to me because I would not have thought about this question. I have no particular decision that I did not like, is what I said. Not that I agree with all of them, Mr. West. But the ones that do bother me are the cases that we hear about the most. And that is because that means that we do have very active neighbors. We have loud voices, and it's really great, and I'm one of them. I gotta tell you, I've got a huge mouth when it comes to wanting something from my community. And we see it. Thank you. And we see it down at City Hall. So it disappoints me when I see cases where our neighbors have to go and sit there for 6 or 7 hours. I've been there plenty of times. You stay there all day. You order pizza to keep people around. You give them rides. You offer them candy, bubble gum, anything to keep them there because it's hours and hours and hours before they can say their piece. Because as Albert has said, not all of them have gotten to say their piece ahead of time. And so now is the time when it comes to the public venue and they have that opportunity. They're upset, they're irate, they're hungry. I just told you that. And they're thirsty and they're tired and they want to go home and they took the day off from work and now it's delayed. And then they got to come back another day. Over and over and over again. So those are the cases that bother me. When the neighbors feel that they have to show up there. It's great to see them, but when they feel like they have to do that in order to be heard. Thank you.
So those were all of our questions for this evening. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our closing statements. Again, you'll have 2 minutes for closing statements, just like we did with opening. And Albert, I think it's your turn to go first.
All right. So I'll say this. Hello? Okay. The reason why I'm running is to make sure that we have true representation for the entire district. And I want to be clear what that means. I think a lot of the issues that we have seen persisting in our community has been because we don't have someone, and we haven't had someone that can listen to all voices. Experience is one thing, but not one person has the solutions to all of our problems. But if we have good representation, if we have good engagement, good community outreach, then we together as a community can come up with the right solutions to our problems. And we could come up with solutions that might not be perfect, but that we can all agree on. That's what I want to be. That's the city council member that I want to be. We saw it with WOCAP. We saw it with the University General Hospital. What happens when you don't have good community engagement? You come up with bad policies, and you have bad recommendations and bad ordinances, right? We cannot continue to allow that to be. We cannot continue to allow our city to have city council members who don't pay attention to the entirety of their district, right? That is very important. If we don't change this, some of these skewed outcomes and bad outcomes are gonna happen with the bond and some of the next big issues, right? We need to make sure that the community and the entire community's voice is heard. That way we will have the best outcomes. I am doing this not because I want a title, not because of the pay. I'm doing this because I care about Oak Cliff. I care about the people that I grew up with. I care about our community. So I hope that I can gain your confidence and that I can earn your vote this upcoming April and May. And it would be a great honor to be your next city council member. Thank you.
Here I am. All right, we're live. Well, it's been really nice visiting with you tonight. It feels like forever up here. 2 minutes feels like forever. I've always had a lot of anxiety about public speaking, so this is like my big test, you know. I have been around for 20 years. I've been doing volunteer work mostly with homeless people, with children, and the outdoors. And I'm a forensic investigator, I'm a teacher, I'm a biologist, and now I'm a neighbor here as well. So I've seen lots of parts of the district, I've seen lots of parts of the district grow. I've had a couple of runs at City Hall here and there. I've spent a little time there once in a while. And so I've done some horse trading in my time. I've negotiated some different things. Maybe I don't always tell you about them because I listen to my neighbors and then I offer them the voice and show them how to do it. I'm a team player. I'm here to help you get what you want, help my new neighbors get what they want. I'm not here, like Albert's saying, for a title. That's not the point of this. I'm not running for election because this is fun. It's not fun to work this hard for 5 months. But it is exciting, and it's exciting to have that opportunity. And sometimes when you have ideas in your head and you hear your neighbors have the same ideas and they want to do the same stuff, then we got to get a little power behind them. So I've got a lot of fuel, and I need a bigger engine. That's what I'm asking for you, and I'm asking for your vote on May the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Grant, Doug, Emma Ruby for being here, Trustee Diana Flores, who's here from Dallas College, elected official, and then everybody who came tonight and spent your time with us. So if you reelect me for another term, I'm going to continue supporting the Chief of Police Violent Crime Reduction Plan and all of his plans moving forward because they worked for him in San Jose. I believe they can work here. I'm going to continue doing traffic calming, like the pedestrian islands you've seen pop up all over the district, the lane reductions that have reduced accidents by 82% on Jefferson Boulevard. I'm going to continue expanding our parks and trails, like bringing Coombs Creek Trail down to Moss Park and Kessler Plaza, expansion of Chalk Hill Trail, which is now in our district, or will be, and bring that down to Westmoreland Park, where we're putting a skate park in. We're going to dredge Kidd Springs Lake. We've already got money allocated to get the study done so we can actually get that lake dredge. Hadn't happened in 50 years. We're going to fix up Elmwood Park. We are working on acquiring land already in the Hampton-Clarendon area. That was identified in WOCAP as a priority, and the city's already doing that. They have money for that now. And most importantly, I'm going to help the Gateway Deck Park get the funding in the next bond so it actually can get finished. Number 3, authorized hearings are coming up. They're going to be controversial. They're going to be messy, just like all kinds of urban planning. Elmwood needs it bad to get the parking reduced so your coffee shop can open here and your other small businesses. We got to get that done. And we're going to protect Jimtown with its down zone over there. I'm going to continue the economic development wins like Target and Sprouts. We're going to keep those coming for Oak Cliff because everybody benefits from those. We're going to address housing, and most importantly, I'm going to get our district through in the 2024 bond with as much money as we're going to get all our money. We're going to try to take some more for our district. So I ask for your support for this next election. Thank you.
All right, that concludes tonight, y'all. Thank you so much for being active neighbors, and I really want to thank Heritage Oak Cliff, Go Oak Cliff, Oak Cliff Advocate, and then ourselves, I guess, but for this event, and actually also Jacob, if we can give a shout out to him for filming this tonight. It's going to be, live on that, so. A quick invite to everyone, if they do want to continue conversations, the tap room is going to be staying open a little bit later down at the other end of the building. And so a few of us are going to walk down that way. And then finally, to the candidates, thank you so much for your time, for running, and for caring for this. So.